everyone. This is a happy Monday. This is week 8. We are halfway through the semester. Time flies, and this week our focus is CVI assessment. There's a lot to cover this week, and we know we've been talking about CVI for quite some time now, and this week we are going to focus on the assessment piece of CVI. And just wanted to let you know that I enjoyed reading all of your eye-conditioned reports. Some of them were very creative. Thank you for that. This week we are going to do, it's mainly readings, but these are really important readings. So we want to focus a lot on readings. So the book that we'll be focusing is Cortical Visual Impairment. We have already done 1 and 2, so this week we will be focusing on 3 and 5. Chapter 3 is Visual and Behavioral Characteristics of Children with CVI, and Chapter 5 is the Functional Vision Assessment, the CVI Range. These are very, very critical topics to understand, so you can't just skim through it, just read it fully. I would highly recommend you to understand these 2 chapters very well. And then we do have other stuff, that is the webinar by Dr. Christine Roman. The webinar is totally worth bookmarking. It's 30 minutes long, but definitely you will keep using this resource over and over again in your practice. And then we do have other websites and resources, like a website tour. I use Diane Sheeline's a lot in our district, Strategy to See, and the APH website. So just bookmark all of them, go through them. You'll learn a lot. And then we do have a sample parent letter attached, because next week we're going to have instructions for writing your letter based on an iReport that we will share. So this one is just a cute example of how a letter should not be written. It has a lot of jargons and terms. It's just a cute thing to read. So this week, as I said, because we need to focus on these critical chapters, you're just going to engage in discussions based on what you're reading, and if you have questions, post in the discussions and things like that. So this week, as far as activities, it's just discussion, but make sure you focus on the reading. So CVI characteristics. So there are 10 behavioral and visual characteristics associated with all levels of CVI students. So this is very typical 10 characteristics. So you will see these behaviors amongst all your students diagnosed with CVI. And it is very, very important, I can't stress this enough, to be familiar with these characteristics, because you are going to be the expert. Nobody, even medically eye doctors, I've noticed that they have no idea about these characteristics because we see them in the educational scenarios much more. So it's very important to be familiar with these characteristics. The reasons are, in order to assess, you need to know what these characteristics are, and in order to provide targeted interventions. So and you should also remember that each of these characteristics is not present at the same degree of severity in each student. So some students may have a particular characteristic stronger than the other. So just know that, just like any other condition, it's not the same. Even if they're all diagnosed with CVI, each of them are different. And then Dr. Christine Roman believes that children show improvement in these characteristics if interventions are targeted. Otherwise, improvement can be limited. So, and the only way you can target certain interventions is to know at what level each of these students are in each of these characteristics. Otherwise, you will not be able to target interventions. We will not be focusing on interventions in this medical course because we'll be focusing on the assessment piece, but you will be learning on the about the interventions in EDSE 640. And in order to complete careful assessment, so sometimes these assessments can be hard to understand, to know how to do, but we have to be very careful. And in order to plan our interventions, again, we need to understand these 10 characteristics. So the next is the CVI range. So the CVI range scale, basically, so we know that there are 10 specific characteristics of these students. So how are we going to measure them in our assessments? So the CVI range scale measures the use of these 10 visual characteristics that impact a person's use of functional vision. So, for example, let me give you an example. So the child sees one color, 2 or 3 colors, or the child sees any different colors at the same in terms of using the functional vision. So if you present a cup, maybe a sippy cup for the child, which is red in color, is the child able to look at the sippy cup while drinking the water? I mean, just grabbing the sippy cup. If it's red, and if it's yellow, it's not able to, or just black or gray, the child is not able to grab it. Then that kind of shows that's very specific where the child stands in the CVI range scale. So the assessment tool, it basically works by rating each individual visual characteristics with a score between 0 and 1. So there are 10 characteristics, so each of those scores you're going to rate either 0, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, or 1. So 0, and then you're going to total the score of all 10 characteristics for a final score. So 0 means the child is just seeing, it's just a current function, just seeing one color, and 1 is almost resolved. So for each individual characteristics, and then you add up all of those, so 10, and you will get a final score which is from 1 to 10. 1 meaning that the use of vision is minimal and close to blindness, and 10 meaning that most characteristics are resolved and the brain is processing most of visual information. Many students of CVI do not go to the exact 10, but they do see characteristics being resolved over the years. The total score is then we indicate as 3 phases. So it's just easier for us to say, okay, this child is in phase 1 and now she or he is moved to phase 2. So if the total score is between 0 and 3, the child is in phase 1, and if the total score is between 3 and 7, phase 2, and 7 and 10, phase 3. So the interventions for each of these phases are very specific. So phase 1, you are going to be targeting certain characteristics more than certain other. And phase 3, maybe it'll be, you will go all the way and do more literacy kind of things. So that's what is going to happen. And then that's CVI range. And then Dr. Christine Roman has also done, based on the total score, there are 5 levels of visual functioning can be determined. So, for example, if the total score is between 1 and 2, is a cluster 1 and 2, we kind of say student functions with minimal visual response. It's easier for us to understand where the student stands. Similarly, 9 to 10, student spontaneously uses functional vision for all activities and his or her vision is near typical. So you need a complete picture of the student. So it is important to assess visual functioning in several environments and several different times. For example, one of my students is perfectly able to track or look at objects in a very quiet, dark room and track light, but if the same object, if the same light is presented to the student in a normal class in front of everybody, I mean, all the other peers, the child is just zoning off. So it's important to note this in several environments and several different times, so we know how these students can learn best in schools. The other points to remember are prepare. Make sure you take all that you need before you do the assessment. Printouts of interview forms, CVI range forms, paper, pencil. So many times we forget things, so just prepare yourself. This book has a kit. You will read about what you need to have in a CVI kit for functional vision assessment. Make sure you have all the materials before you go in. In our district, we have 2 kits. We have prepared for each of our teachers. One is CVI kit and one is the ocular kit. It doesn't mean that I will not test ocular problems with CVI students, but it's just like separate kits so that we know that depending on who we are assessing, we just take that kit and then assess the students. And it's all in one place. We take copies of forms, keep it there so we don't have to forget it. So we take time in preparing these 2 kits. So make sure you do so too. It just makes life so much easier. And the more practice, the better we get. So it's like everything. So I wasn't the best the first year. So the more and more I did the CVI range scale, I got better. And I mean, like for example, the first few times where I have to, in the rating scale, I have to mark plus or minus, I just mark them all wrong. And then I realized that you will have to mark plus when the statement describes the student's current functioning. So just make sure you read page 99 through 100 really carefully. So understand how you're going to do this. And if you have any questions, any challenges in this, please do not hesitate to ask Dr. Conroy or myself. We'll be happy to help. Have fun learning about this very unique diagnosis, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.